The big thing was a lot of people, and I don't know why this is like why all of a sudden EUIC sparked this because it didn't feel like this came out after, or it doesn't feel like people had the same kind of feeling after LAIC that I can remember. But quite a few players were bringing up the fact that there's way they're like kind of refreshing the idea of that there's way less rounds now in the current tournament system than there was, and it feels bad to have lost those 2 Swiss rounds, which is what we normally would have had last season. We would have had 15 Swiss rounds, 2 more in day 2, but this season we had 9 day 1, 4 day 2 instead of the 6. But we do
Yeah.
have asymmetrical cut now. Question
Yeah.
is whether or not that trade-off is worth it.
Yeah, and I think the more we go into this season, I think the more I'm leaning towards it's not worth it, that the more Swiss rounds is better. And then it is unfortunate for the person or one or two people who bubble at like ninth, 10th or whatever. Like I think that if we have to choose between what we have now and what we had last year, I think what we had last year was overall better.
Yeah, and I think, the majority of people agree with that as well. I haven't thought about it too hard myself, but I think, yeah, probably is just better to have the more rounds. And it is weird though, because like, we had those that tweet, was it from,
Chris
who was
Brown.
it from? Who basically made it, yeah, Chris Brown, who basically made it seem like implied that, like, they thought this is what the community would want without even asking the community. Or no, maybe it wasn't Chris Brown, maybe it wasn't, like, the update, the little article or whatever they put out, actually, I think. I don't think it was from Chris Brown. I think it was in that article that TBCI put out, where they were basically like, "Well, to add asymmetrical cut, we had to get rid of Swiss rounds." And it's like, okay, but like, they worded it in a way that made it seem like this is like, we know the community really wants this, so we're gonna give it to them, but we're gonna take away Swiss rounds. But it's like, I don't think the community wants to lose Swiss rounds to get
Yeah.
asymmetrical cut.
I think everyone
Um,
really liked the idea and likes I think for the most part people like the idea of asymmetrical cut, right? Giving
yeah,
more people a chance to continue on in the tournament if you have like the same match points and stuff, right? But I don't think anyone knew that we didn't know what was going to have to be taken away for that
yeah,
to happen, right?
exactly.
And I think that's the drawback here. But yeah, I mean, we had a couple people kind of voicing their thoughts about it. Stefan here tweeting how last year at an AIC he went 6-1-2 in day one, but was able to make top cut by going 6-0 day two. And then he ended up getting second place at the tournament, right?
Yeah.
And that's a cool story as well because Stefan has won an AIC twice, right? And he was in a position to win it a potential third time. Um, and that's something that just wouldn't have happened in this current system going from day one to day two at 6-1-2. Um, and it's like been very evident since they like made that adjustment at the start of this season where you can make day two at a lower record, right? Knowing like so people going in from day one to day two at X12 and X21 go in knowing that they can't make top cut, right? There's still a lot to play for.
Yeah.
There's, massive prizes for even top 60. I mean, top 64 at these ICs gets like $2,000. Like it's a lot of money, right? So there's a lot to still play for, but I think like for the top end of competitors, I mean, you yourself, if you went in to like this happened to you in Sacramento, right? You went in from day one to day two at 6-1-2 or 6-2-1, whatever it was, knew you
Yeah,
couldn't make top
621.
cut. You're just way less, you care way less about the tournament now. Like you're gonna still try, obviously, but like you care about winning, you care about making top eight.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, it's probably a little bit different than the average person or even average, like, competitive Pokemon player as well. Um, but yeah, it definitely but the thing is, like, I don't think that's too big of a concern. The idea of making day 2 and not being able to make cut, I personally don't have an issue with, because I don't overly see a problem with, like, letting people who are, like, 5 and 4 make day 2. Like, if they wanna play more rounds of Pokemon, that's basically what they did with this change mid-season, allowing, instead of X2 making day 2, X21 making day 2, knowing people who go X21 almost will never make top cut, although we did see it happen in Merida, and that's why I was able to win that tournament, is because X21 all of a sudden, at some tournaments, was able to make top cut, right? I think that's the only tournament we've seen it at, probably. X12 has made it into top cut at a couple tournaments so far off asymmetrical cut. And then obviously we had Louisville where X2 didn't even make top cut. So we've had a little bit of everything, it feels like, so far.
Yeah.
But yeah, I personally wouldn't really have a problem with 5-4 making day 2. So, but do we think someone who's 5 and 4 should have the chance to make top cut? Probably not. I think we can all agree on that. I think we can all, and then the only thing we could disagree on would be whether or not we think they should be in day 2 to begin with. And for me, it just comes down to a logistics thing. Like, as long as they have enough judges and it makes sense logistically to have that many people playing in day 2, then go ahead. If it doesn't, if it's like, no, for how much space we want to have available when we start breaking things down, or with how many judges we're going to have available in day two, it doesn't make sense for anyone worse than X21 to be in day two, then that also is fine. Then the question is just at that point, what record should be able to make top cut? What do you think players should need to achieve to be able to get top cut? And I'm pretty content with X and two, to be honest. But I wouldn't mind X and two being the threshold with more rounds as well, or just more rounds in general. Then all of a sudden you can do worse than X and two to make cut. Which is if we went up to 15 rounds again, we'd probably regularly see people at like I don't know X13 or X21 be making top cut, which I would be fine with as well. I'm not even against that, so I'm not even against more rounds, but I'm also content with the bar of X and two, right? So
Yeah, it's just a big difference from where we were, I feel like last season, where at basically every tournament that had 15 Swiss rounds, so
yep,
6 rounds of day two, 12 and 3 made cut. And at several of them, X 2 I guess probably wasn't, it was like at some of the smaller ones, but still with 6 rounds, X
yeah.
2 was making cut. So it's like you're talking about a full 3 match point difference as to what it takes to get from
I
top
think I
cut last
got
season to this season, right?
I'm trying to think. I think actually at the one that I got ninth at, the one that Ryan Antonucci won, the one that Nucci won, I think I got ninth at X22, and then the X22 bubbled in, like Jackson
Yeah.
Ford bubbled in over me. Um, Maybe there was two of us. Might have been just one of us though. Uh, so yeah, and yeah, so I mean, and I definitely don't think, like I said, I think the majority of the community, I think a lot of people don't care, which is kind of the more of the boat that I'm in. Nothing is extreme enough to the point where I care that much. Like I said, I'm content with X2 being the threshold to continue in the tournament. Um, if we have more rounds, great. I'm not against it. If that leads to records worse than X2 making cut, that's fine with me as well. Um, but I think the more competitive players, I think the majority of them, and even maybe some less competitive players, more casual players, just the opportunity to play more rounds just sounds kind of cool. So I think the majority of the community, probably in general, if you had to vote, uh, 13 rounds or asymmetrical cut versus 15 rounds, no asymmetrical cut, I think most people are voting 15 rounds for sure. Um, so yeah, it just makes it that. And then the weird part with that is it like coming from Pokemon, it doesn't sound like it's a logistical thing. It seems like whenever they talk about it, it seems like they think this is what the community wanted without asking the community. Although I think a lot of people do like the idea of asymmetrical cut. I do personally. I would love for that to stay, but not at the trade off of two Swiss rounds, obviously. And I think we will see a change, whether it be a midseason change or maybe not change until next season. I think they will make a change because I think the sentiment's pretty clear across the board from the community, and I think they know that they messed up a little bit with their assumption.
Yeah, I'm trying to I don't remember who I saw filling it out, but there was like some survey that someone was filling out after an event, and one of the things
Oh,
the
I remember
survey
that.
asked
Yeah.
them was something about the tournament structure, like what type of format they preferred.
Well, I think they
And
were. I think it was asking the question about best of three or best of one.
yeah,
I
well, I
remember
saw one
that.
that was some talking about something like double elimination and stuff like that.
Mm,
Um,
that would be
so
terrible.
yeah, that would be
See there,
terrible. With can you imagine a 4,000 person double elimination tournament?
dude, that'd be awful.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be rough. Yeah, I think double eliminations. I don't even like. I think because I think that's what like Pokemon Go plays right now, but I think they all hate it.
Yeah.
Because like I think the experience that ends up happening is like someone loses a round, or like they win like the first couple, and then they lose a round, and then they have to wait for forever to play their game. So it's
Yeah.
like they'll win a game, lose a game. They have to wait for forever for the losers bracket to catch up. Then they get to play their game, they lose again. So they played 4 games. It took them like 5 hours to do, and then they're out of the tournament and it's over.
But the Swiss system is like the most competitive, I would say, system because you have the highest chance of getting the best players or the most prepared teams going forwards. And we've actually like League of Legends, the World Championships of League of Legends has adopted the Swiss system the last 2 or 3 years. And in some CS:GO major tournaments, they do it as well, where they play like a Swiss system. It's a little bit different. It's like um for League, if I remember correctly, it's like once you're 3-0, you get removed from the pool of teams. So you're playing to go 3-0, or you get to round five and you're 2-2 and you have to win your third match or whatever, right? So even like we see like even these huge esports start to adopt the Swiss system because it is like the more competitive system to get the best team, the best player. the most prepared team, the most prepared player going furthest in the tournament by having like more second chances, which you could also make the argument if you're not going all out and winning every single game, are you really um, the better team? But it does leave less up to luck, less up to chance, even in stuff like esports or even like sports. You could make the argument for as well. Yeah, Tord did this. I had this tweet as well. Give us 2 more rounds. So Tord definitely feeling the 13 rounds. I think he went X2-1 in today too, and then he went 4-0. Not
Yeah.
enough for top cut though. I don't. It's not even enough for enough for top 16. I think he ended up top 32.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
And for someone like him too, like, I mean, I feel like he starts 4-0 in day 2 and he's like feeling the momentum. He's like, "All right,
Yeah.
who's like, come on, like I'm ready. Let's keep it rolling. Keep this tournament moving." And it's like,
No
"Nope,
one's stopping me at
it's
this point.
done. You're over."
Yeah. Well, once again though, like we said, like if someone was 4 and 5 and they were allowed to play day 2 if they wanted to. If they win 4 in a row and they're 8 and 5, I don't think anyone's like, they should be given the chance to make top cut
Sure.
somehow, right? So, like,
Sure.
it's not just about if you make day 2, you should have the chance to make top cut. The argument truly is, uh, it feels like there's not enough, forgiveness in the current system, or just the idea of more rounds is always better, and it doesn't seem like the logistics was a reason to take away these Swiss rounds. So just give us our more rounds back. People can still make day 2 and not make top cut, but just give us more rounds. And
Yeah.
if you actually go to Jake Gearhart's tweet, he
Which
put out
one?
a the one with the little graph for asymmetrical cuts. If you just go to his profile, um, he tweeted out one just kind of like showing like how they could, make the change. And this would be keeping asymmetrical cut as well, but it would be instead of giving us the potential of top 32 asymmetrical, limit it to just top 8 or to top 16 asymmetrical and give us back one Swiss round, I believe is
Yeah.
the trade-off he was looking for here. So or notes, natural Swiss plus one.
Yeah, it's literally
Ooh, am I
doing
correct
that.
on
It's
that?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's adding one more Swiss round and capping TCG up to 16 players. Right now, it's capped up to
Yeah, yeah, okay.
32
That's what I thought it
players.
was.
Yeah, and like that
Yeah, which is
that
very
is
unlikely
key.
we ever get to a more go ahead, sorry.
No, it's like, yeah, we're like you said, it's unlikely we're ever gonna get to 32 players, but it's like baked into the schedule as something that could happen, which logistically, when you're planning a massive event, you should plan for the most unlikely scenario to potentially like you need to have the plan for
Any
that
outcome, yeah.
in place. Yeah. So like in the schedule, there
Yeah.
is
And
space
that's one of the
for a top
things
32 top cut round.
and that's one of the things they said in that, like, article that I talked about, where it's basically they were like, "Oh, the community seemed like they really want asymmetrical cut, so we want to give that to y'all, but we're taking away 2 Swiss rounds." And that's not something the community ever said they wanted. And that's what they basically said. It's like, "Well, to add the potential of a top 16 asymmetrical cut and a top 32 asymmetrical cut, we have to take away effectively 2 Swiss rounds to make up for the potential of that." But it's just then it's like, yeah, the community definitely does I don't think wants that trade-off, or the majority definitely doesn't, and I don't think anyone's gonna stop playing the game
Yeah.
if you give more Swiss rounds today too. So I don't know. I like asymmetrical cut, and maybe if they really like asymmetrical cut and they really want to keep it, this would be a good middle ground to meet at going into next season. I mean, maybe they make the change halfway through the season. I feel like they probably won't, but maybe next season give us back one Swiss round and then cap asymmetrical at top 16 instead of top 32.